My wife and I have spent the past 48 hours, mainly my wife, but because I'm married, I kind of get to watch things, whatever she's watching, I get to watch with her. My wife and I have started watching and completely finished the first season of a show on Netflix called Outer Banks. And I'm wondering if you have seen this show. If you have, please let us know in the comments if you've watched it. If not, or your parents won't let you, then maybe that's good. I don't know. Anyway, we watched the show Outer Banks, and we pretty much watched it all in one day. And unfortunately or fortunately, whether or not you like the show, we were very much enveloped in all of the plot points and the drama and the situations that were happening in the show episode by episode. But as the show went on, I started to get really frustrated with the characters and somewhat the writing of the show because they keep getting in situations over and over and over again, and they keep getting into more and more difficult situations simply because of one little thing, one little detail. And it's this. And as I was watching it, I literally was saying to myself, and I finally said it out loud to my wife, I said, no one tells the truth or lets anyone know what's actually happening. No one actually says what's happening or tells anyone what's actually happening. They just keep letting the situations play out over and over and over again, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse for them. At one point, someone is framed for murder, and there are 5 witnesses to this thing, and none of them just tell the truth or report actually what happened. And if you listen to the dialogue of the characters, it actually stems from them not feeling like they could trust anyone. The people that they could be talking to or telling the truth to, all of them, well, the group decide that they don't have anyone they can trust or that they can tell what's actually happening to. And I'm wondering right now, and even as I was watching the show, I was wondering to myself, I wonder how accurate that is right now for high school students. I sit there watching the show and I was wondering, I wonder how many students feel this way in their life. That they don't say anything, that they keep things in because, one, they don't feel like they can have anybody that they can trust to talk to, or maybe specifically the more complex or complicated issues, they don't feel like they can really communicate to anyone because of how those situations are. If we're being honest, my generation, which was born 800 years ago, it seems like, versus your generation, even though there's only truly, ultimately 10 to 15 years apart, there has been a significant difference in the life of a high school student when I was in high school versus now with you being in high school. Now see if this sounds familiar, because here's what your generation, here's what I think you're expected to go through on a yearly basis, a daily and monthly basis. Now here's the first one. You need to have success in your academics, which means you need to have the highest possible GPA because of where that could potentially get you with scholarships for college. So what that means is you need to spend more hours studying and doing homework, and because education has changed and now more projects are happening, you have to spend more hours on a project that's due for a higher percentage of your grade. And when you're in class, you have higher demands of your in-class work as well. And then after school, or maybe even before school, you have extracurricular activities like choir or band or dance, or if you play a sport, you have practice that you have to go to or you have to be a part of either before school or after school for several hours. And you can't slack off there because people are going to see what you're doing, and so there's a high standard and expectation for you of that. And next, some of you might have to have a job to be able to afford a car or gas money or to save for college because your parents aren't going to help you out with that, or you just want to have spending money to use with your friends. So now you've added more stress and more time on you. There are relationships, both friendships and romantic relationships, that you want to try and to keep up with, to have deep relationships with, and maybe even to grow in a significant way with those people. And that takes time, energy, and effort. And it's probably most of the way through your phone, so you don't ever actually get away from that. On top of that, you're trying to figure out who you are as a person, whether or not you like this, or you don't like this, or you want to be like this, I don't want to be like this. And then you go home where you're away from all of it, and then most of the time you walk into some type of family conflict or issue or struggle or difficulty at home where you're supposed to be the most peaceful. And then you have to worry about getting on social media and comparing yourself to what your Instagram feed or your Snapchat stories look like and how great their lives are and how great you don't feel like your life is. And then on top of that, when you're supposed to sleep because of all the stress and all the worry that you're going through and all the complications and struggles in your life, you can't sleep because you can't shut your mind off. And I'm wondering if you know what that's like. I'm wondering if any of that chaotic and stressful process I just listed off looks anything like your life. Because I think, if you're being honest, what I just said probably feels pretty accurate. See, here's what I want to start off with tonight. Everyone is going through this. That process that I just listed off. Every one of your classmates, all of your friends that you go to school with, they're all going through some form of this process, this chaos. And the truth is, no one is talking about it. No one is communicating or stating how things really are. Even though everyone's going through it and everyone can relate to it, no one's actually talking about it. And we have words that describe what happens when we get to this critical level with these situations that are happening in our life. The two biggest ones that I want to put labels on tonight for that situation and all of these things that are happening come out in two words: stress and anxiety. Stress and anxiety. All of these situations create stress in your life. And when enough of those stress things happen and line up and are going on at the same time, well, that's when we get to the point of anxiety about our situations. But I want you to understand, these aren't just words. There's actually a process to go on behind, and that helps for us to understand what's happening not only in front of us, but also inside of us as well. Now, some of you have seen this video. And of all the videos that I've shown in my time teaching here at First Christian Church, leading the high school ministry of Fuse, this video that I want to show you has been talked about and referenced by so many people. And so I think it's helpful, and I want for you to see this video again, or maybe for the first time, to help you understand what happens inside of you when you experience high levels of stress and move into anxiety in your life.
When our amygdala gets turned on and starts firing stress hormone to help us cope, those hormones flood our frontal lobe, and our frontal lobe is responsible for being rational, but it gets turned off because it gets flooded with stress hormone. And so your brain is in like a stress bath, basically. If your amygdala gets turned on too often, it means that your body is perceiving threat even when it's not there, and that's what an anxiety disorder is.
Anxiety disorders are the most common mental health problem in the U.S. right now. About 20% this year will suffer from an anxiety disorder. And then the anxiety disorders have the earliest age of onset of any mental health problem. A typical age of onset is 10, 11, 12 years old, whereas something like depression, the average age of onset is actually more in your 30s. So anxiety really tends to strike at a young age.
So these two things, stress and anxiety, have an incredible impact on our life. And these two things are legitimate issues for you and for all of us if not properly recognized and really taken care of, because they can move from just stress and stressful situations to having moments of being anxious to having anxiety attacks, having panic attacks, and turning into a mental health issue over the long term of your life. And here's what I want for you to understand. Christians in general, and many facets of the church over the past 50 years, if I can just be honest with you, and if you're in the older generation and you're watching right now, you might not like what I'm getting ready to say, but I just feel like I'm obligated to tell the truth about this situation. That Christianity and the church and a lot of people inside of the church over the past 50 years haven't really handled this very well. Haven't really given a lot of hope or help in these situations over the past 50, 25 years when this comes up in relationships and in people's lives. Because there's kind of this stigma that Christians who truly have faith wouldn't have these things happen to them. Are you having anxiety or panic attacks? We would like for you, if you would just have more faith about God in your life, then these things would be removed or taken away from you. I know of many students. I know of one that I've heard in the past year that went to her parents and said, I'm anxious. I feel like I'm having panic and anxiety attacks. And they looked at her and said, if you would just believe in God more, those things would go away. And I just want to tell you, I don't think that that's completely accurate. And that student walked away from that conversation with their parent feeling just like what I described. I don't have anyone that I can tell about the things that are going on. And I want for us to just take a quick peek into the story of two people in Scripture and what happened in that time. So if you have your Bibles, turn to Matthew chapter 14, because I want for you to see that what you're going through in this idea of stressful situations and anxious moments and even having anxiety and panic attacks, it's not neglected or not talked about here in Scripture. It's actually referenced in some pretty significant people in Scripture, and I want for you to look at them. So Matthew chapter 14, we're starting in verse 22. You may have read this passage before, you may have heard this, but I want for you to just take a closer look at the people involved and what they go through in this moment. Verse 22, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after dismissing the crowds, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Well into the night, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat was already some distance from the land, battered by the waves because the wind was against them. We had this chaotic, stormy situation happening. Verse 25, Jesus came towards them walking on the sea very early in the morning. Well, Jesus, just doing Jesus things, right? Walks out on the water because, he's the OG. He gets to do that. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said. They cried out in fear, like losing their mind. Verse 27, immediately Jesus spoke to them. Have courage, it is I. Don't be afraid. In verse 28, Lord, if it's you, Peter answered, command me to come out onto the water. So Jesus said, come on out. Verse 29, and climbing out of the boat, Peter started walking on the water and came towards Jesus. But when he saw, let me zone in here for a second. But when he saw the strength of the wind, meaning when he looked and he saw the situation that was happening, and he began to process that he was walking on water and there was a storm going on around him, all things that are not good for people to be a part of. When he saw the strength of the wind, he was afraid and he began to sink and he cried out, Lord, save me. Recognize what's happening here. Peter's in the middle of going about this really incredible thing, and he looks around and he sees the situations, and he sees what's actually happening, and he begins to process what's really going on, and he becomes afraid, and he freezes, he stops, and when he stops, he can't do anything in the water, he starts to sink into the water. Now, it doesn't say this, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that what he just did in that moment was had a panic attack. That the situation he couldn't understand and process froze him in his tracks and stopped him from being able to do what he was already doing. The situation got to him in an incredibly powerful way. and let me just flip to you, because someone would say, well, Jeremy, that was Peter. He was just a human. Of course, the circumstances got to him, and the stress of the situation, and all the things that are going on. Of course, that got to him. But let me read for you Luke 22, verse 44. This is right before Jesus is getting ready to be arrested, to be put on trial, to be crucified, and to die. Luke 22, verse 44, it says this: being in anguish, Jesus prays more fervently, and his sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground. In this situation right here, Jesus is in full understanding of what's happening and what's getting ready to happen, and his prayers are just so intense. He's in such this incredibly tense moment of stress and anguish that he sweats blood while he's in prayer. Now, this isn't just like a made-up thing in the Bible. There's actually a name for this. It's called hematohydrosis. And because there's so much blood being pumped in certain parts of the body in these crazy, stressful situations, the vessels in the body that are carrying the blood, they burst. And when they burst, the glands that produce sweat, instead of releasing sweat, they release blood through those glands. It doesn't happen a lot, but it is documented that this is a thing that happens. And if Peter, who is one of the greatest leaders that we've seen in the history of Christianity, can succumb to panic and chaos and crazy moments, and Jesus can be so in anguish and stress that this can happen to him, it would be crazy, or it would be unfair for you to think like you wouldn't be having moments of anxiety and panic and chaos and fear like they do. If they experience it, it's probably natural to assume I can think that I'm going to be experiencing some type of that. And listen, let me just put this up there. Anxiety and panic are incredibly powerful because they're so much more than just what is represented. They're powerful because they're spiritual, they're mental, they're emotional, and they're physical. All four of these areas are what consist of your life. And when you get stressed out because of your life, and you get these anxious moments because of fear and uncertainty, things happen spiritually, they happen mentally, they happen emotionally, and they happen physically. And this is all encompassing of your life. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. That in moments, everything just kind of hits all at one time. And having to deal with these moments of panic and anxiousness, I need for you to know it doesn't make you weak or less of a person because you go through it. In fact, I would tell you that it means you're human. Because Jesus, who was human and God, experienced this. Peter, who was human, experienced this. And I need for you to understand, as we're talking about what it looks like to be stronger, that you become stronger when you admit you have struggles. Let me say it again. You become stronger when you admit that you have struggles. And it's not if you have struggles. You don't become stronger if you have struggles. It's you become stronger when you admit you have struggles, because we're all going to face them. And the truth is, you and I, for some reason, we connect shame and guilt with our mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional struggles. When we feel like we aren't doing what we need to, or we're not good enough, or I must be a failure for not being able to handle all these situations, we immediately connect shame and guilt for not being able to live up to a standard that we've set in our head, or a standard that someone else has set for us. We connect guilt and shame, and we beat ourselves up for this, and it just makes it worse. And because of the shame and guilt we feel often connected with that, we never actually talk about or share our struggles with people. We try to handle them ourselves. It's like we put one thing and we're holding one thing, and it's like holding a book, and then someone walks up and puts another book on top, and puts another book on top, and puts another book on top, and continues to stack up to where you're holding down here, and the stack is all the way up here, and you're just trying to hold on because I should be able to handle this. They're just books, right? And because we feel like we've failed, or we're not living our life the way that we need to, or we're not as good as we should be, we handle it ourselves and we connect guilt and shame with it. And I want to share this quote with you. It says this: when we share our shame and our struggles, the power that they have begins to diminish. When we share our shame and our struggles, the power that they have begins to diminish. So here's what that means. When I talk about the things that I'm struggling with, when I talk about to other people, either a friend, a youth pastor, a parent, a counselor, whoever, when I share those struggles, the shame and the difficulty that those bring that I'm holding on myself begins to become less. And the more and more and more I share about those things, the better off that I am. It's like if you would go to a doctor for an injury and he asks, "Was anything wrong?" And you would be sitting there with a broken arm and you're just like, "No, I'm doing great." And then you leave the doctor and you're like, "I don't know why I'm not getting better. I don't know why the doctor didn't help me. I don't know why I can't get past this broken arm." Well, you didn't tell him about it. He can't help. No one knows about it. And when we share our struggles, well, that's when they lose their power and they become to have less of a hold on us. You become stronger when you let people in on your life. And it's kind of opposite, because it feels like that means we're being dependent on people. And that's the way God has created us, to have other people in our life, to share burdens and griefs and struggles and sorrows and tragedies and happiness and joy and all the good and the bad times. God has created us as people to be connected to other people, to carry and share the burden that we were never meant to carry alone. You become stronger when you let people in on your life. In Ecclesiastes 4:12, it says that essentially with one person, it talks about rope, that if you have one piece of rope, it's easily broken. If you put two pieces together, it becomes really difficult. Number 3, if you put 3 cords together and you wind them up into a cord of 3 strands, it's almost impossible to break. And when you do it by yourself, you're easily broken. And when you let one person in to share that with you, it becomes easier. And when you get more people involved, it gets even easier. It's harder to let those things take you down the more people that you let in. So I want to be really practical over the next few minutes here. What can you do, or what do you need to do when life just seems overwhelming and you start to get anxious, or you feel that panic well up inside of you, or if all the situations that you're in right now, you can't seem to figure out a solution and you're just getting buried in those moments by those things? Well, I want to offer some advice to you that I think is important. And there are 6 of them. I'm going to have Nate put them up here. And I want for you to look at these and to maybe see if some of these might be for you and might be able to help you where you're at right now in your life. Because all of us, especially right now, in the middle of COVID-19 and all things being taken away and all restrictions and limitations, all the things that are going on in your life, it is like a powder keg of anxiety and panic and fear right now. And that's not going to change, because that's just kind of how life is in certain seasons. So I just want to share these with you, and I want for you to maybe just see what might be helpful for you in this time right now. The first one is this: don't bottle things up. If something's going on, don't think, "I'm tough, I can figure it out, I can handle it on my own," and just continue to put things inside of you and to bottle them up and not talk about them. It's crazy dangerous to do that, because at some point they are going to come out of you, and the more of them there are, the more violent it's going to be. And some of you know this by seeing other people do this, and some of you know this by experiencing it yourself. So when things that make you anxious or create fear in you, or you have these moments of panic, don't bottle it up. Don't keep it inside. Let other people know what's going on. Remember that you're not an inconvenience to the people who care about you. So many students I talk to hold things in because they're like, I don't want to put my problems on other people. I don't want to inconvenience them. You're not an inconvenience. The people who care and love for you will care for you and love for you even more when they find out that you're hurting and you need help. You're not an inconvenience. Next one, feel all of your feels. So many people are like, I'm supposed to be strong, not weak, and so I'm not going to feel sad right now. No. Whatever the feeling is that you're feeling, let it be a part in that moment of what's going on and how you're processing the situation. I know so many people that experience terrible, awful things, and instead of just feeling that and working through that, they just choose to try and move on and to ignore those feelings. And don't. Just feel all of your feels, whatever that's going to be. Next one, change your location. If you're in the middle of a situation that's causing you anxiety and panic and really getting your fear driven up in your stress, maybe the best thing you can do is just to leave the room for a few minutes. If you're inside of your house and you're just feeling like, man, I'm all in my head right now, and I don't know what to do, maybe the best thing for you to do is just get up out of your room, walk around your house, go outside, stay 6 feet away from people, but go outside and spend some time away from the situation that's got you all fired up. Next one, let's go over here. Get professional help. Listen, there is nothing wrong with, and in fact, I would encourage you that if you feel like you've tried everything, go to people who spend their life trying to help people overcome and to become healthy in their mental state by what they do for a profession. Go get professional help. Go see someone who does this for a living to help you figure out how you can be in a healthy spot, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally, and can get into a really great spot with your mental health. And this final one, this is for people who are watching. If you're like, I love Jesus, and I'm a Christian, I follow after Jesus, I just want to encourage you to let your faith be the influence on situations and to not let that be reversed. Don't let your situations influence your faith. Up, down, I don't want to follow God. I do want to follow God. If God were good, then he wouldn't let these things happen. Therefore, I'm not going to follow God. That's letting your situations influence your faith. But in fact, I would encourage you to do the opposite and let your faith influence your situations. This is not a good thing for me right now, but I know God is he's going to use it for good. I don't have any hope in this situation right now, but I'm trusting in God that no matter what happens, that I can find my hope in him. Several years ago, my youth pastor, he was talking about me specifically and how I handled a situation, and it was a really cool moment. He was being very generous with complimenting me for how I handled things, and someone in our youth group spoke up, and he said this phrase, and I'll never forget this phrase. Maybe this is a good phrase for you. He said, I will never look at a storm the same way again, because, he said, here's what I do. He says, I don't tell God how big the storm is. I tell the storm how big God is. Let me say it again. I don't look at God and tell him how big the storm is. I look at the storm and I tell it how big God is. What he was saying was, I let my faith influence these situations. I don't let these situations influence my faith. And we have a saying around here that we talk about at Fuse. And I think you just need to hear it. And the phrase is this: it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. All of us are going to walk through hurts and pains and fears and struggles and tragedy and triumph. And it's okay for you to be wounded or to be hurting, but it's not okay for you to stay that way, to hold on to that and to continue to be there. Let people in. You have permission to let people in on your life. Now, if what I've talked about tonight, you're like, Jeremy, I would love to have some more information on this, or the video clips that we showed, you're like, I'd like to see what the rest of that content was. All you have to do is DM us on Instagram, and I can send you the information on where you can continue to maybe look at this a little more. But I want you to remember, you're stronger, both in your faith and as a person, when you admit that you have struggles. And you're stronger when you let people in on what's happening, instead of trying to hold it on to yourself. We're going to close with a song, and I want for you to maybe take these next few seconds, if you're in a living room or a general living area, to just maybe go into your bedroom and put some headphones on and to just take these next few minutes, because maybe it's been a really long time since you let someone in on these situations. And I would encourage you during this next song that maybe for the first time in a long time or the first time ever, that you would just take all the things that are worrying you, that have you stressed out, that you're anxious about, that you're afraid of, and you would just take a few moments to go, God, I want to come to you and I want to let you in on this. So as we're singing this next song, I would encourage you to just take a few moments to do that, to declutter and to de-stress your mental state, and to simply say, God, here's what I'm dealing with. I want to let you in on what's going on. So take these next few moments. Listen, maybe to the words, or just take these next few moments to just simply do a de-stressing time to talk to God about what's going on in your life. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, same channel. Remember, you don't have to do it alone. You were created to do life with people. We love you. Have a great week. See you next week.
You were the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. You didn't want heaven without us. So Jesus, you brought heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. Death could not hold you. The veil tore before you. You silenced the boast of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring in praise of your glory. For
'cause death could not hold you. The veil tore before you, silence the boast of sin and grave. Heavens are roaring the praise of your glory, for you are raised to life again. You have no rival, you have no equal, now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom, yours is the glory, yours is the name above all names. What a powerful name it is. What a powerful name it is, the name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a powerful name it is, nothing can stand against. What a powerful name it is, the name of Jesus. What a powerful name it is, the name